What's on your playlist right now?
In my class.
Go to guilty pleasure food.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Hi, my name's Tom Lin. I'm originally from New York, but I moved out here to Davis in 2019 to pursue my PhD in literature at UC Davis. My debut novel, The Thousand Crimes of Ming, was published last year by Little Brown and went on to win the 2022 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction. It's a classically structured Western with a Chinese-American protagonist fighting his way west across the deserts of Utah, Nevada, and California as he tries to rescue his abducted wife.
Welcome to Face, Tom. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Well, we first have to jump into the book. Congratulations on the award. That's really a tremendous honor, and we're all so proud. But tell us about the book and what drew you to write the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in New York City, and I miraculously secured a driver's license without actually knowing how to drive very much. But I didn't have the chance to drive in New York City, so it wasn't until I came to California for college that I got this kind of terrible secondhand car, and then finally was able to drive around on my own. And so I ended up going to all these places, and I really fell in love with the landscape of the desert in Southern California. And I figured that I was going to write a Western to kind of pay tribute to that landscape. And the more I looked into the history of things and learned about the Chinese Exclusion Act and all the laborers that were primarily of Chinese descent that worked on the railroads, especially in this western half of the continent, the story became more and more urgent to me. And so finally I arrived in Davis, I think in 2019, and I had tried to get it so that all my furniture would kind of presage me when I got here. And when I did, in fact, get into my apartment, the only thing that had arrived was this armchair and nothing else. And so I sat in the armchair and I kind of worked on the book because we're on the quarter system. So I had this kind of beautiful 3 weeks of lead time because I was thinking, if I don't finish it now, I'm going to get really sucked into all the grad school work that I'm doing, and I don't know when it'll ever get finished. So I actually did end up finishing up the editing and everything, and that was it. And it was, Proust has a saying of when he finally did manage to write something, it was like laying an egg, and it did feel kind of like that, like a tremendous relief.
There have to be very few Westerns, I would think, that have a Chinese protagonist. So that's got to be a unique feature of your book. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I kind of got started and thinking about the idea, when it was just the kernel of Western but with a Chinese American protagonist. I figured there's got to be at least a dozen books out there, and it turns out there aren't very many. There's C. Pam Zhang's How Much of These Hills Is Gold, which is I think from 2018. And there's a couple more on the horizon that I'm very excited about. And there's a couple of TV shows as well, like Warrior on HBO. But generally, it's not a story that gets told very often. The thing that I like to say is that Westerns have been to space sooner and more readily than they've had a Chinese-American protagonist.
Another unique thing about your experience is winning the Carnegie Medal on your debut novel. That's got to be pretty exciting, and tell us about that. I mean, that's how often has that happened, if ever?
It was absolutely it was tremendous every step of the way. There was first the long list, and then there was the finalists, and then there was the announcement. And at each step, I just felt, that's like surely they're gonna realize that they've accidentally looped me in with these other super heavyweights, and they're gonna just like knock me out as soon as they get the chance. And so I was floored when I got the call, and it was this interesting kind of thing where I got the call and I had to keep it quiet for a whole month, and I've never kept anything quiet for a whole month. I give away Christmas presents the day after I purchase them, so I'm not one for secrets, but I had to kind of go about my business, and so by the time the announcement rolled around, I had actually grown accustomed to it. And so it was quite nice being surprised all over again, and I was blown away by all the wonderful comments that I got from readers and other people who were familiar with the story. It's just been fantastic.
What's the medal process? Do you apply for it? Someone nominates you? What is that process?
It is. I think it's the publisher. So my publisher, Little Brown, is they're God bless them, they're in charge of all the paperwork. And so I think they submit these nominations, and ultimately a panel of librarians decides, and which I think is amazing for the Carnegie, because the librarians are really, they're, I mean, at least for me, like, they've saved my skin hundreds of times, and they've certainly done their fair share of, walking me through which books I most would like to read.
Very interesting. Given all the publicity, what are the prospects of the book being made into a TV series or a movie, anything like that in the works?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I actually can tell you at this point now. I've had to keep the secret for a while, but it has been optioned by Topic Studios and Blue Marble. And the exciting thing is that I am listed as an executive producer.
Congratulations!
Thank you. It's pretty wild. But the thing with Hollywood, it's always hard to say certitudes. But as far as things are going right now, it seems to be really exciting. I'm really looking forward to kind of digging my teeth in and seeing how to adapt this into a different medium.
So we're breaking news here on Face to Face today.
Absolutely.
About that. Tell me about how you got started. When did you start writing? Why did you get interested in being an author?
Yeah, I wanted to write stories ever since I was a little kid. I was born in Beijing, and my family moved to Sydney, Australia first when I was 2, and then to New York when I was 4, maybe 5. And in lieu of childcare, or kind of organized childcare, what would happen after school, because my mom was working like 12-hour shifts, and my dad was delivering pizzas, I would walk from school to the public library and then just kind of sit there until one of my parents would come get me, which is a great kind of cheat code to making sure that your kid is safe and entertained for however many hours it took. And so I would go to the main branch of the Queen's Library and just read stories after stories. And I think if you do enough of that, eventually you start to dream about telling your own. And I think that's exactly what happened. And I think, to me, it's always had the kind of the valence of when a kid says that they're going to be an astronaut, like, how many astronauts are there really? And so I think around high school or undergraduate, I started to think, well, it wasn't very pragmatic for me to really try to be a novelist. So I resolved to be kind of as close to literature as I could and study English and English criticism. And it turns out that was also incredible amounts of fun. But I've always had this dream of being a writer, and I always wrote little stories. And this book is actually not the first novel-length thing that I've written. The first 2 are terrible, but I think they were a learning experience. And I think having this continuous impulse to produce, I think, is definitely what motivates me.
Well, given all that and your experience, what advice would you give to other up-and-coming novelists and authors?
Oh, I think far and away the number one piece of advice that I ever received, and I'll pass it on, is finish the thing. It's always so much easier to start something than it is to finish it, and finishing's the hard part. And I think if you can just drag yourself, tooth and nail over the finish line a couple of times, eventually it starts to feel a little easier. But yeah, absolutely, just you have to it has to have an ending. It has to be done.
I always tell my PhD students, just write a little bit every day.
Yeah.
Even if it's a paragraph, just write something.
Just
every
get
day.
to it.
Yeah. Aside from your own PhD, tell me what other projects you're working on after the success of this book.
Well, I am thinking about, I don't want to say writing because I'm not writing and I don't want to lie to you, but I am thinking about the second book, which is going to be science fiction and set in the near future. Some stuff about quantum physics in there, so I'm doing the fun part of writing, which is research, which has all the feeling of accomplishment, but none of the actual productive demands of writing. So I've been reading a lot of books about, like quantum theory and many worlds.
I'm a science fiction buff, so I'm really geeked that you're going to write a science fiction book. In fact, maybe you could find a place for a character that's patterned after a certain chancellor in your next book. No pressure. And speaking of that, have you drawn any inspiration from anything in your experience here at Davis in your writing?
Oh yeah, it is fantastic to be right here in the West, alongside all these things. The Sacramento Rail Museum, 30 minutes down the road, with traffic, 3 to 4 business days, but otherwise 30 minutes. But it's cool to be kind of in this part of California and be so close to the material history of this stuff that I'm really interested in. And certainly like the resources that UC Davis provides are far and away they're unmatched for someone who is doing research in both kind of trying to produce fiction and analysis. Like the library, I actually have to renew the dozen or so books that I've got out now, and they're so nice that they let me keep doing that. But I think one of the biggest things that I get from being here is just like the time and the freedom to work on the things that interest me and the support of people who like really also get it. That's
great. I'm glad that we're helping you to succeed. But you do have to return those books, otherwise we're not going to let you graduate.
Oh.
I want to turn the tables a bit here and play a little game that we like to call Hot Seat.
Okay.
And in Hot Seat, I ask you some rapid-fire questions looking for like a one-word or one-sentence short answer. Sound okay?
Easy.
All right, good. Here we go. Best novel ever written?
Moby Dick, Herman Melville.
Wow, okay. Which is better, East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast.
Why?
Liquor and grocery stores, the lanes are wider, and gas that's a negative. It's cheaper on the East Coast.
That's true. So if you could have dinner with any author, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say John Steinbeck.
What would you have?
I think he'd have some crazy kind of like farm to fork local Salinas goods.
Okay. What are you reading right now?
Right now I am reading Schrodinger's Rabbits by Bruce Collins.
Sounds interesting.
As well as But Beautiful by Jeff Dyer, which is a book about jazz. Very nice.
I like jazz as well, yeah. So I'll give you a free ticket to anywhere in the world. Where are you going to go?
Madagascar.
Why?
It's got some of the crazy. I want to see the Avenue of the Baobab trees.
Okay.
And it's such a crazy kind of flora and fauna there. It's so beautiful and so hard to get to. So I'm taking you up on that offer because the logistics are a nightmare.
Yeah, I'd like to go myself. Never been. Okay, let's flip the script. Now you can ask me any question you would like.
Okay. Coolest place you've ever been?
So I like beaches, and the family, we took a trip to the Maldives a couple years ago.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Very, very nice trip. Beautiful place, very peaceful. But I'd have to also say we went to the Serengeti to be with nature and see the animals in their natural habitat, and that was a wonderful and spiritual kind of trip.
That's
for
awesome.
us. Yeah.
You take the Jeep and go.
Yeah, you go out on
tracks.
the Jeep with the Jeep on what they call the game drives, and just watch the animals. You're now in the zoo. You're in the Jeep, and you can't get out, otherwise you're in trouble. But you just see the animals doing what they do.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's another. How many years do you think we are from commercially viable fusion power?
A great question. So although I'm an engineer, I'm not a nuclear engineer, so that's just not my specialty. But I will say that fusion has been 30 years away for about 50 years. So, but I think there are about a dozen companies, maybe a couple dozen companies worldwide who are now working on commercially viable power. And one of the leaders says they're 10 years away from their first commercial reactor.
Wow.
So we'll see.
I'm excited to be 10 years away from it for 20 years.
Yeah. I suspect it'll be the same kind of thing where we'll not quite get there in 10 years, but it's going to be a game changer, as you probably can guess. I imagine you're asking that question because of the science fiction interest that you have now?
I'm trying to figure out how much juice I can cram into some of these devices that I'm trying to work on.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense now. Well, Tom, it's been wonderful talking with you. Thanks so much for being on Face to Face. Fascinating things you're doing, and the campus and me, we're also proud of you for your success and wish you much success in the future.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic.
My pleasure. And thanks to all of you for watching. And we'll see you next time here on Face to Face. Go Ags.